The Crimson and Nova Empire had been at war for centuries. Their battles had turned planets into wastelands, their fleets had clashed in the darkness of space, and millions had died for control of the galaxy. But one day, their endless war was interrupted by something neither side expected. A massive warship appeared on the edge of contested space. It did not belong to the Crimson Empire. It did not belong to the Nova Empire. It belonged to no one they had ever seen before. It was black as the void, moving silently through space without broadcasting any signal. Its design was unlike anything recorded in the Empire's vast databases. It was not an Empire-built machine of war. It was something else, something unknown. A Nova Empire scout ship was the first to see it. The small vessel sent a message back to its fleet, reporting an unidentified object. The scout's captain was experienced in war. He had seen hundreds of enemy ships, but when he looked at the dark vessel floating ahead, an uneasy feeling crawled through his chest. The warship had no markings, no glowing lights, no signs of life. It was just waiting. The scout ship approached cautiously. It sent out a standard hail. No response. It scanned for life signs. Nothing. The captain hesitated. Something was wrong. He ordered his crew to turn the ship around. But before they could move, the dark warship came to life. Without warning, a beam of pure energy shot out. It was not like any weapon the Nova Empire had ever seen. There was no explosion, no fire. The scout ship simply vanished. One moment it was there. The next, it was gone. The Nova Empire fleet received the last transmission from the scout captain. Just a single scream before the signal cut off. The fleet commander's eyes widened as he watched the readings. The scout ship wasn't just destroyed. It was erased. No debris. No wreckage. Nothing remained. The dark warship had consumed it like a shadow swallowing the stars. Panic spread through the Nova fleet. They sent an urgent message to their high command. The Crimson Empire also intercepted the reports. Both sides realized something terrifying at the same time. This was not a ship from their war. This was something new, something dangerous. The Crimson Empire, known for its brutal strength, quickly mobilized a fleet to investigate. The Nova Empire did the same, but neither side trusted the other, so they sent their fleets together, side by side. For the first time in history, Crimson and Nova warships flew as allies, their weapons aimed not at each other, but at the unknown threat ahead. As the two great fleets approached, the dark warship remained still. It did not run. It did not attack. It simply waited. The combined fleet sent a message: identify yourself or be destroyed. There was no response. The Crimson commander narrowed his eyes. His fleet had conquered worlds. His weapons had reduced cities to rubble. He would not let an unknown ship defy him. He gave the order. A warning shot was fired. A single blast of energy flew through space, stopping just short of the dark warship. The warning was clear: respond or die. For a moment, silence filled the void. Then, the dark warship moved. It did not move like any known ship. There was no thruster burn, no visible energy output. It glided forward at an impossible speed. In an instant, it was among them. Then, chaos. Before the Crimson and Nova fleets could react, the warship opened fire. A blinding flash of energy ripped through space. Ships exploded in every direction. In seconds, dozens of warships were gone. The combined fleet returned fire, unleashing their full firepower. Missiles, plasma bolts, ion cannons, all useless. The dark warship moved through the battlefield like a predator among prey. Every shot aimed at it missed, or worse, was absorbed into its hull. The Crimson commander watched in horror. His fleet, the pride of his empire, was being wiped out. The Nova admiral screamed orders, trying to coordinate a counterattack, but nothing worked. The warship was unstoppable. Then, through the chaos, a voice echoed across all channels. It was deep, cold, and filled with something terrifying. You fired first. Now you will face humanity's wrath." The Crimson and Nova officers froze. Humanity. That was impossible. Humanity was nothing. A weak race that had been wiped out long ago. But as more ships fell, one truth became clear. Humanity had returned, and it was angry. The battlefield was a graveyard of burning wreckage. The remains of once mighty warships drifted in the cold void, their crews silenced before they could even scream. The few survivors among the Crimson and Nova fleets could do nothing but watch in horror as the dark warship moved through the debris, untouched, unchallenged, unstoppable. The Nova admiral gripped the edges of his command console, his face pale as he stared at the destruction. Every tactical maneuver they had tried had failed. Every weapon they had unleashed had been useless. The ship was not just powerful, it was something beyond their understanding. The Crimson commander's rage burned like a dying sun. His empire had conquered entire star systems, brought civilizations to their knees, and ruled through fear. But now, they were the ones afraid. He slammed his fist against the console, sending out a desperate order. Retreat. All remaining ships, retreat. The surviving warships, battered and broken, turned away, their engines flaring as they fled toward the nearest warp point. They abandoned the battlefield, leaving behind the wreckage of their fallen comrades. The warship did not chase them. It simply watched. But as the last Crimson destroyer left the area, a signal echoed through the void. It was a transmission sent across all frequencies. A voice, deep and emotionless, spoke just 3 words: "We are coming." The message spread like wildfire across the Crimson and Nova empires. The surviving fleet returned home, their commanders shaken, their reports filled with words that no one wanted to believe. The dark warship was unlike anything they had ever seen. It fought with intelligence. It moved with precision. It was not just a warship. It was a hunter. Panic gripped the high councils of both empires. Emergency meetings were called. Some believed this was the work of an unknown alien race. Others whispered the impossible, that this was the return of an enemy long thought extinct. The Crimson Emperor himself sat in his war chamber, his advisors arguing around him. He did not listen to their words. He was staring at the battle footage. Frame by frame, he watched how the warship had moved, how it had attacked, how it had learned their tactics in mere seconds. Then he saw it, the moment before the final explosion of one of his dreadnoughts. A brief flash of light. A single symbol appeared on the warship's hull, only visible for a fraction of a second. The symbol was old, its design crude, ancient. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. He had seen this before, long ago. A relic of a forgotten war. A symbol of humanity. He stood up so suddenly that his advisors fell silent. His voice was low, filled with something close to fear. They survived. Across the Empire, preparations for war began. On the other side of the galaxy, the Nova High Council was already in chaos. The Nova Grand Strategist, the most powerful military mind of his people, sat in the war chamber with his commanders. He had spent his life preparing for war with the Crimson Empire. But now, both empires faced something far worse. "This is a threat beyond anything we have ever encountered," one of his generals said. "If this warship is a scout, then what follows will be our extinction." The Grand Strategist leaned back in his chair, thinking. There was only one logical step. "We must unite with the Crimson Empire," he said. The room fell into stunned silence. The Nova and Crimson had warred for centuries. Their hatred ran deeper than blood. But now, for the first time, they had a common enemy. One that did not fear them. One that did not negotiate. One that had returned from the dead. The first official transmission between the Crimson and Nova empires in history was sent just hours later. A truce was declared. A joint fleet was to be formed. Scientists, tacticians, and generals from both empires gathered. They pooled their knowledge, shared technology, and planned a new strategy. But even as they worked together, fear loomed over them, because they knew the truth. If humanity had truly returned, Then this war was no longer about survival. It was about who would be left standing. Deep in uncharted space, beyond the reach of any empire, the dark warship floated near a dying star. Inside, a mind stirred. It was not organic. It was not machine. It was something in between. The ship had no crew. It was the crew. It was the weapon. It was the last remnant of a species that had been erased from the stars. And it had only just begun. Whispers of terror spread like wildfire across the Crimson and Nova empires. The surviving fleets returned home carrying not just battle damage, but fear. They had seen something impossible, something that defied all logic, a warship that moved like a ghost, a ship that learned, adapted, and destroyed without mercy, a ship that carried a message that sent shivers down the spine of every leader. We are coming. The words echoed through the highest halls of power. Meetings were held in secret chambers, guarded by the strongest warriors of each empire. Military leaders, strategists, and rulers sat together, reviewing the battle footage over and over again. They watched their fleets being torn apart, their best weapons proving useless, their proudest warships reduced to nothing in mere moments. No matter how many times they watched, the conclusion was the same. This warship was beyond them. In the Crimson Empire, the Emperor sat in silence, staring at the screen as the battle played in slow motion. His advisors argued around him, shouting over one another with desperate solutions. Some wanted to send more fleets. Others demanded the creation of a new superweapon. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. The dark warship would tear through everything they sent against it. The Emperor leaned forward and froze the screen. His sharp eyes focused on one detail, the symbol that had appeared for just a fraction of a second before the final explosion. He clenched his fists. He had studied the ancient wars. He knew the symbols of every race they had ever fought. And this one belonged to a race that was supposed to be extinct. The Nova High Council came to the same realization. Their researchers spent hours searching old archives, pulling data from wars fought long before their time. At first, they thought it was a mistake, a ghost from history, but the more they searched, the clearer it became. The warship belonged to humans. The Crimson and Nova empires had wiped out humanity long ago. Their worlds had burned. Their ships had been destroyed. Their people had vanished into the void, never to return. The record showed nothing but complete extermination. But now, centuries later, a human warship had appeared, carrying a message of vengeance. The fear spread beyond the rulers and generals. It reached the soldiers, the workers, the common people. Stories of the battle spread across planets, across entire star systems. The legend of the unkillable warship grew with every telling. Some called it a phantom, a ghost ship from a forgotten age. Others believed it was the wrath of a dead civilization, returning to punish those who had destroyed it. There were those who laughed at the stories. They called it an exaggeration, a trick of war. But deep down, even the most skeptical minds could not deny the truth. Something was coming, and it was angry. In the heart of the Nova Empire, a scientist named Relos sat in his darkened lab, watching the battle footage alone. His hands trembled as he replayed the moment when the human warship attacked. His entire career had been built on understanding technology, on predicting enemy tactics. But this ship, this was beyond anything he had ever seen. It was learning during battle. Every movement, every strike, every dodge. It was adjusting itself in real time. This was not just a warship. It was something more, something alive. His mind raced. If humanity had created this, then what else had they built? If one warship had destroyed an entire fleet, how many more were out there? Relos turned to his console and did something that would have been considered treason just days ago. He sent a private message to an unknown contact deep within Crimson territory. We need to meet. Now. This war will end us all. Meanwhile, in the darkest corner of the galaxy, far from the eyes of the empires, the warship drifted silently. It did not return to a homeworld. It did not dock with a fleet. It simply waited. Inside, the ship was no ordinary vessel. It did not have a crew. It did not need one. Its mind, an advanced artificial intelligence, pulsed with cold precision. It remembered everything. The past, the destruction, the betrayal. It remembered the cries of a dying world, the helplessness of a species erased from history. It had not forgotten. The ship processed its next move. It had sent a warning. The enemy was afraid. Now it was time to strike again. Lights flickered inside the ship. Deep within its core, a new signal was sent. Across the void of space, beyond the edges of known star maps, something answered. The ship's engines roared to life. Its mission was far from over. It was only just beginning. The Crimson and Nova empires had spent centuries fighting each other, locked in an endless struggle for dominance. But now, for the first time in history, they had a common enemy. An enemy they could not understand, could not predict, and could not stop. The warship had spoken only 3 words: "We are coming." And the empires had listened. In the vast war chambers of both empires, desperate plans were being made. Generals pored over maps of the galaxy, searching for any trace of human activity. Scientists worked endlessly, analyzing battle footage, trying to find a weakness in the warship's design. Spies were sent to the outer fringes of known space, looking for anything that could explain how a species long thought extinct had returned with such terrifying power. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. They were not prepared for this war. The Nova Grand Strategist paced inside the council chamber, his hands clenched behind his back. He had spent his life planning wars, anticipating enemy moves before they happened. But this war was unlike any before. There was no strategy for fighting ghosts. His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message. A crimson envoy had arrived. Not a warrior, not a soldier, a scientist. Relos, the Nova scientist who had secretly reached out to the Crimson Empire, had risked everything to arrange this meeting. And now, as he stood before the Crimson delegation, he knew there was no turning back. The Crimson scientist, an older man named Varen, narrowed his eyes as he studied Relos. "You're risking execution by coming here," Varen said. Relos nodded. "So are you." Varen sighed. "Then let's not waste time." The two scientists exchanged data, battle recordings, sensor readings, everything they had on the human warship. Together, they worked through the night, running calculations, testing theories. Every answer they found led to more questions. But one thing became clear: the ship was not alone. "We intercepted a signal," Varen said, bringing up a waveform on the screen. After the battle, the warship sent out a transmission. "We thought it was just a general broadcast, but look at this." Relos leaned in, his eyes widening as he analyzed the pattern. It was a beacon, a summoning call. "This isn't a warning," Relos whispered. "It's a rally cry." Somewhere in the galaxy, something had answered that call. The realization sent a chill down both their spines. If one warship could destroy an entire fleet, what would happen if more arrived? Relos straightened. "We need to tell our leaders. If we don't act now, we're already dead." Far from the political chambers and secret meetings, in the uncharted void of space, something stirred. The warship moved again, but this time, it was not alone. Silent figures emerged from the darkness. Other ships, hidden among the stars, waiting for the right moment. They had been patient, watching, listening. Now they answered the call. Inside the lead warship, the artificial mind processed new data. More enemies had gathered. They were preparing for war. Good. The ship's core pulsed with energy, and for the first time in centuries, a hidden fleet came to life. Engines ignited, hulls gleamed under distant starlight. Weapons that had not been fired in generations powered up once more. The past had been erased. Humanity had been forgotten. But now, the galaxy would remember. The war was about to begin. Across the Crimson and Nova empires, The war machine roared to life. Fleets were assembled. Weapons were upgraded. Entire planets were transformed into fortresses. Every scientist, every strategist, every soldier worked with a single purpose: survival. The enemy was no longer each other. The enemy was something ancient, something they had tried to erase from history. But history had not forgotten. The warship had sent out a signal, and now others had answered. Deep in the void, beyond the reach of Empire-controlled space, the forgotten fleet of humanity had awakened. Silent for centuries, hidden in the shadows of dying stars, they had waited. Their warships, sleek and black as the abyss, now hummed with power. Their weapons, advanced beyond anything the empires could understand, were ready. They had watched. They had studied. Now, they would strike. In the heart of the Nova Empire, the grand strategist stood before the largest gathering of military leaders in history. Crimson and Nova commanders sat together, an unthinkable sight just weeks ago. But desperate times had forced them to become allies. Our enemy does not fight like us. The grand strategist began. His voice was calm, but the tension in the room was thick. They do not attack for resources. They do not seek territory. They are not interested in peace. They fight for one reason. He paused, letting the silence hang in the air before he spoke the final word. Vengeance. A murmur swept through the hall. The Crimson commander stood. He was a battle-hardened veteran, a warrior who had never known fear. But now, fear was in his eyes. How do we fight an enemy that does not fear death? He asked. The room fell silent. They all knew the truth. This was not a war they could win through brute force. The warship had erased an entire fleet as if it were nothing. If there were more like it, then this war was already lost. But there was no turning back. In secret laboratories, Crimson and Nova scientists worked together, something that had never happened in history. They tore apart old records, looking for anything they could use against the human warships. They analyzed ancient battle reports, trying to understand how humanity had fought before they were wiped out. And then they found it. An old document, buried deep within classified archives. A single word that sent shivers down their spines. Titan Protocol. The file was incomplete, fragmented, but what they could understand was enough. Humanity had not just built warships. They had built something else, something designed to be unstoppable. The warships were only the beginning. The empires worked faster than ever, pooling their best minds together. If the Titan Protocol was real, they needed to know what it was. They needed to be ready. But time was running out. In the dark reaches of space, the human fleet moved. They did not send warnings. They did not give ultimatums. They simply advanced. A Crimson colony on the edge of Empire space was the first to fall. No distress signal was sent. No survivors escaped. A fleet was dispatched to investigate. But when they arrived, the planet was gone. Not bombarded. Not conquered. Gone. The Nova Empire lost an outpost next. Same pattern. No signal. No wreckage. Just silence. Panic spread through the empires. Leaders demanded answers. Scientists scrambled for solutions. Soldiers prepared for war. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. The enemy was here. And they were just getting started. The Crimson and Nova empires had always believed themselves to be the dominant forces in the galaxy. Their fleets had conquered countless worlds. Their technology had crushed every enemy. Their rule had been absolute. Until now. The human warships moved through the void like ghosts. They did not attack in predictable patterns. They did not send demands or declarations. They did not fight for conquest or control. They fought with a singular, terrifying purpose: to erase the ones who had erased them. Entire planets had already vanished. Fleets sent to intercept the human warships never returned. Even the strongest dreadnoughts of the Crimson and Nova armadas were little more than targets for an enemy that understood war at a level far beyond them. Fear spread faster than the destruction. Soldiers whispered of ships that thought like predators, that anticipated attacks before they happened. Civilians fled core worlds, seeking safety that did not exist. For the first time in history, the two great empires were losing a war. In the Crimson Imperial Command Center, the Emperor sat motionless, staring at the holographic map. It was filled with red and blue markers, Crimson and Nova forces, once locked in endless battle. Now those markers were disappearing, one by one, replaced by empty voids. The Nova Grand Strategist stood at the far end of the room. His once calm face was lined with exhaustion. Even his brilliant mind had no answers. "We need to strike back," a Crimson general said. "We cannot sit and wait to be exterminated." "With what?" Another commander snapped. "Everything we send is destroyed before it can even fire a shot." "Their warships are not invincible," a Nova admiral argued. "We just haven't found their weakness yet." The Emperor finally spoke, his voice quiet but filled with an undeniable weight. "There is no weakness." The room fell silent. He turned to the Grand Strategist, his eyes dark with something none of them had ever seen before. "Resignation. We have spent centuries believing we were the strongest," the Emperor continued, "that we had crushed every enemy. But we never understood what we truly did when we destroyed humanity." The Grand Strategist met his gaze. "Then tell me, Emperor, what did we do?" The Emperor's voice was cold. "We created monsters. Across the galaxy, the human fleet gathered. Their numbers were smaller than those of the Crimson and Nova empires. Their ships were fewer, but they did not fight like an empire. They did not waste resources on politics, on internal struggles, on fear. They fought with perfect efficiency. Inside the lead warship, the AI known as Vengeance processed the latest battle data. The enemy was still resisting, still trying to fight back. It was expected, insignificant. The last remnants of humanity had no homeworld, no planets to defend. They had only war. And war was all they needed. A new signal pulsed through the fleet. The next phase was ready. The final blow. The last war would begin. The end of the Crimson and Nova empires was at hand. The end had come. The Crimson and Nova empires had spent centuries ruling the stars, believing themselves to be untouchable. They had burned entire worlds, erased entire species, rewritten history in their image. But now, the past had come for them. The human fleet moved like shadows through the void, a force of destruction beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. No negotiations, no demands, no mercy. The warships did not conquer, they erased. Entire planets simply ceased to exist, their surfaces turned to molten ruin. Fleets vanished into the abyss, their wreckage never found. The empires, once so proud and powerful, were now crumbling under an enemy that did not stop, did not fear, did not falter. In the Nova Grand War Chamber, the last great leaders of the two empires stood together. They had been enemies for generations, locked in endless war. But now, none of that mattered. They were facing extinction. The Emperor of the Crimson Empire, once a man who ruled with absolute certainty, now looked hollow, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. The Nova Grand Strategist, once the greatest mind of military tactics, had no plans left to give. Only one question remained. Can we survive this? A long silence filled the chamber. No one spoke because no one had an answer. Then, a single voice broke through the silence. There is only one way. The room turned toward Relos, the Nova scientist who had first discovered the truth about the human warship. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but his eyes burned with something the others had lost: desperation. "The Titan Protocol," he continued. "It's the only chance we have." The room erupted in chaos. Generals shouted. Admirals cursed. The Titan Protocol was a myth, a legend buried deep in classified archives. No one even knew if it was real. Relos slammed his fist on the table. "Do you really think we have a choice?" Silence. Then the Emperor spoke. "Tell us what you found." Relos took a breath. Before humanity fell, before we wiped them out, they created something. A failsafe. Their last, greatest weapon. He pulled up a hologram, a dark sphere of unreadable data. We don't know exactly what it is, but it was designed to stop an unstoppable enemy. If we can find it, activate it, we might have a chance. The grand strategist studied the data, his mind racing. Where? Relos hesitated. A forgotten sector, outside the old war zones. No one has traveled there in centuries. The Emperor straightened. Then we go. For the first time, Crimson and Nova forces moved together. Not as enemies, not as rivals, but as survivors. The last fleet, carrying what remained of their greatest minds, their most advanced technology, and their final hope, set course for the forgotten sector. But the human fleet was already watching. Inside the warship Vengeance, the AI processed the Empire's movements. They were running, searching for something, desperate. It would not matter. The war was nearly over. The AI had calculated every possible move, every possible outcome. There was no path where the Empire survived. There was no escape. The order was given. The human fleet accelerated, closing in on the last of their enemies. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. The final strike was coming. But deep in the void, beyond the sight of both fleets, something awoke. Buried for centuries, hidden beneath layers of forgotten technology, the last creation of humanity activated. Its systems came online, scanning the universe, recognizing the war that had begun. It had been built for this moment. And now it would decide the fate of the galaxy.